So my name is Bob Hunt. I've got a unique job at Microsoft. My role is a technical evangelist. I'm responsible for a number of different things, but a large portion of that is community. So I've got some good ties with local user groups that are focused on Microsoft and non-Microsoft technology. So I just threw some stuff up here that I'll refer back to later, but my blog, my Microsoft blog is bobhunt.net. And a lot of information I'm going to share tonight is around Windows Azure. So I've just thrown up a couple short URLs. I put them out on Twitter as well, but Azure Primer, ak.ms is one of Microsoft's short URLs, but ak.ms/Azure Primer would be a good way for you to get up to speed if what I'm about to show you interests you a bit. So what I'm going to talk about tonight is Windows Azure virtual machines. I'm going to talk about a couple different things and how it impacts the IT Pro business. Windows Azure has been around for a bit, and we've moved into the IT Pro space, meaning that it's more than just a developer play, starting in the April timeframe. So I'll talk about that. We have support for key server applications. This Windows Azure, for those of you who have not heard of this before, this is Microsoft's cloud operating system. It came out back in the 2010 timeframe, really being a place for developers to put their code and very quickly move to what was been referred to as a platform as a service offering, where the only thing that's hosted in the cloud is your code and your data. All of the server infrastructure and IT rigor that goes beyond that is handled by the data center folks, essentially the Microsoft data centers that are behind that. So we'll talk about how that's evolved to now allow you to do some infrastructure as a service stuff. From a storage manageability, we'll talk about a little bit about that. High availability is built in. You generally do not pay for that. So if you're hosting something in the cloud, you can be rest assured that it's going to be part of the 3.5 nines financially backed SLA that comes with Windows Azure. So what that means is essentially less than 4 hours of downtime a year. If we do not meet that goal on a monthly basis, right? So whatever that percentage is of 4 hours over the course of a month, we will mail you a check. We don't do service credit. We actually do mail checks. We have mailed checks. We don't like to mail checks. No service provider is perfect, though we all aspire to be. It's managed by people, on software written by people. So enough said about that. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the advanced networking that will really evolve to allow hybrid networking, and briefly talk about, if I have time, about the integration with the platform as a service offering that's part of this infrastructure as well. So, now one of the unique things that I like to point out, so you're obviously in the Microsoft building here, one of the things that's very unique about Microsoft when we talk about our ability to host a workload, be it cloud-based or otherwise, Microsoft is in a unique position in the fact that we are really the only company that can do what I'm about to show you, which is host your workload wherever you would like it to be, right? If you want it to be on a physical workload, you want it to be on virtual, you want it to be on infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service, we really have no competition that I'm aware of in this space, the ability to do that. So it's a very unique thing. Tonight we're clearly going to focus on the infrastructure as a service offering and talk about the foray into the Windows Azure marketplace. So this really allows you to have full control of management of virtual machines in the cloud with a virtual networking offering that really allows you to extend your existing data center infrastructure up to Windows Azure. So Windows Azure feels like nothing more than an extension of your existing data center. So rather than me talk a lot about it, I figured the first thing that I should probably do is show you what the portal looks like and go through the creation of a virtual machine and go through the process, because it happens relatively quickly. So Windows Azure is the first thing that you're presented with when you go to sign up for it at windowsazure.com is you get access to a portal. What we're looking at on the screen right now is the web portal. The navigation goes down the left-hand side of the screen. You've got multiple tabs to scroll throughout the different items that you have hosted in Windows Azure. What I'm going to do right now, you see from a listing, I've got a bunch of different things that are already up here and running. I've got some storage accounts and websites and cloud service and virtual machines. I'm going to go through and click on the plus button. I'm going to create a new virtual machine. I've got a couple different ways to create a virtual machine. I can do a quick create where it's all sitting on a single screen and I can get it up and running very quickly. Or that I have the option to create it from the gallery, which is what I'm going to choose right now. So keep in mind what I'm showing you right now is a listing of things that have been provided by Microsoft, as well as some things that I've uploaded myself. So you're going to see a bunch of things here that you can automatically create a virtual machine from. So I'm going to use Windows Server 2012 Data Center, but I'm going to point out a few other things that are here where you can build relatively quickly, right? So I can spin up a SharePoint server environment, a SQL Server environment, BizTalk, and then you see some other things that might shock some people. We had all the Macs that were up here on the overhead. People are like, oh, so, I heard some chuckles before about the Macs in a Microsoft office. We get those chucks. Microsoft's very friendly to non-Microsoft things these days, probably a lot more than you think. So with the announcement the other, at the developer conference earlier this week that Siri is going to be powered by Bing, that should shock probably a lot of people. So you see how we do like and play well with others. So in this case, bringing that up, seeing a lot of Linux workloads here hosted up inside of Microsoft's cloud might also be a little shocking for some folks. But here at the bottom of the list, I'm pointing out something else that I had uploaded, right? You notice that's in this gallery. I uploaded a virtual machine here myself, so I put up an image that I created and I uploaded. So this could be your corporate gold server image, Linux, Windows, whatever you would like it to be. So you don't necessarily have to start from a Microsoft place to go through and create a virtual machine. So I'm going to choose Windows Server 2012 Data Center. I'm going to choose the latest roll-up, which was last month. Going to give it a name. I'm going to pick a size. I've got a number of different offerings which I will talk about later. I'm going to, from an administrator standpoint, administrator is blocked. So essentially, I'm setting up a new Windows server. So I'm going to have to create a user account. And it does require a strong password, which I guess is a good thing. Now I'm going to do a standalone DNS name, so I'm going to call this, and since I'm not using my own DNS for the purpose of this creation, keep in mind I'm using the default cloudapp.net domain, which is part of Windows Azure. If I've already done and extended my existing bobhunt.net or whatever domain name that I own up to Windows Azure, you would certainly be creating them in that DNS space, and you would generally create up your own lab. And Affinity Group, I've got the ability to choose where I want to host this virtual machine, right? So I've got a couple places in Asia, a couple places in Europe, or we are in the eastern part of the US, so I'm going to choose that. And then I've got a couple different subscriptions. It's important to point out if you're an MSDN subscriber, we changed our licensing for those folks who have MSDN, so you get a dollar amount credit every month towards Windows Azure that you can put towards any service. So that's was a big announcement last week at Microsoft TechEd. Last thing here, just do I want to be able to PowerShell into it? Well, of course I do. And then an availability set is just an ability for you to do some what I'll call cloud architecture. I'm not going to have time to really jump into today, per se, but that gets things going. And away you go. So I could have done this all on a single screen if I chose that quick create option. But I chose to choose the gallery, and then it allows me to pick different types of virtual machines and different options. So what you'll see here is you'll see it to start to provision, and it generally takes about, I don't know, 6 to 8 minutes to create this virtual machine. And then magically what I'm able to do is I'm able to click on this connect button right here, and then I'm going to be able to RDP directly into this virtual machine. It will be provisioned and set up. Now keep in mind, I'm doing this through a web portal. I could do this same provisioning via PowerShell. And the 6 to 7 minutes that I'm creating one virtual machine, I can create 1,000 virtual machines, 10,000 virtual machines, as many as I want, using my images at essentially any scale. So Windows Azure over the last 12 months is a $1 billion business, right? This is not a little business for Microsoft. At Microsoft, as I think about the company and how we work internally, right? We're like 75 different little startups inside of the company until they get to the point where they have that B word. So Azure was the fastest business to $1 billion. Previous to that, it was SharePoint. So it seems we keep getting there faster with each business inside of Microsoft. So while this is building, I'm going to jump back to the presentation and talk a little bit more about behind the scenes. So Windows Azure, as I mentioned, has been around for a little while. I threw this ancient slide up here just to let you know that this isn't kind of a skunkworks project for Microsoft. It started in the 2007 timeframe with, of course, a classic Microsoft internal product name. It was called Red Dog back in 2007. And as you can see, we released it in February of 2010. So we're about almost three and a half years in business. And as I said before, we moved to the infrastructure as a service model. Was released to manufacturing on the day after tax day, April 16th, 2013, after being in a preview mode for about a year. Interesting offering, right? So most of you folks are pretty familiar with the cloud models that are available for you to host an offering, right? As you see more and more green, that's more and more that is managed by you. And generally the choices between these which one of these places for you to host your data really depend upon the amount of control that you need to have over your application. So once again, an interesting thing, we're talking about infrastructure as a service here. You still do have control over the operating system and the middleware and the runtime, right? So infrastructure as a service means Patch Tuesday is still on you, and platform as a service and software as a service, Patch Tuesday would be on us. So one of the things that I thought was unique to point out about Windows Azure that's really evolved significantly in the last few months is the ability to host what's called a hybrid cloud. So really connect your existing infrastructure on-premise up to Windows Azure. So you see through the middle, the green, the common technologies. You have a common identity where you can use things like Active Directory as a single point of authentication. But in addition, we have something that's called Windows Azure Active Directory that also allows third-party authentication. So you're able to authenticate using Facebook and other things as well to get into applications that are hosted inside of Windows Azure. So behind the scenes, certainly we've been using virtualization and Windows Server 2012 and whatnot to host things, regardless of whether the workload is Linux or Microsoft or not. But it really ties these two things together. So from a virtual machine size perspective, I just like to point out really quickly, right, I'm an evangelist, I'm not in sales. My job is really to help IT pros learn more about Microsoft stuff. So I hate talking about licensing, but I'm happy to, in the networking side, to talk about the little bit that I know about this. But these are the sizes that are currently available. And it's important to point out how things change from a pricing perspective and a bandwidth perspective and a memory and processor perspective. It's important to recognize the fact that you can change these things on the fly. So you're able to make changes to say, okay, I'm going to do a demo in front of a crowd of 100 people. I probably want to be running a large VM, but at the end of this, I can go and click down and switch it back to an extra small, and my compute per hour goes down to the point where it's very inexpensive. So I'm not limited to doing that. So I've already talked about the images that are available. We do have I threw a few other slides in here to talk about the differences between persistent disks and highly durable disks, which really just talks about the fact that anything that you put up in the storage for Windows Azure is something that's called a persistent disk. So it would be subject to those 3.5/9 SLA that is up there, and failover is included. So if you have a failure of your virtual machine due to a hardware failure or something behind the scenes, that is something where we will keep it up and running. You won't even know it is down under most circumstances unless we have a significant data center outage. So the hybrid networking that I was referencing very quickly before talks about your ability to now do a site-to-site or point-to-site VPN from your infrastructure using either Cisco, Juniper, or a software-based VPN directly to Windows Azure. You're able to take your existing DNS infrastructure, take your existing Active Directory or any cloud-based offering that you have on-premise and extend it to, or I should say private cloud-based offering, and extend it to the public cloud. To really let Windows Azure use 192, 168 for all your virtual machines. If you want to use that, fantastic, you can do that. Same Active Directory, same infrastructure, you're just extending it to the cloud. Essentially, your ability to now bring this workload to the cloud is really the idea. So this virtual machine, just to kind of wrap up here, is, as you can see, is already running. It's provisioning. Essentially, it's turning it on, which means it's getting a public IP address and a public URL that I've already given it, and this should be up momentarily to talk about that. So So I know I'm just about at time, so I will be here, but I figure I'd take a few minutes for questions. So I'm in New York, I can talk quite quickly as it is, so I don't want to talk any faster than I already have, but any questions so far? All right. We're all experts on Azure, I love it. All right, good. So appreciate everybody's time, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the future months at the Enterprise Tech Meetup. Thanks, John.